Welcome to My Mum is White, Exorcising Half-Caste Ghosts panel discussion. Thank you for coming. What we're going to do today is try and give you some insight into what we've been up to in this space for the last 3 weeks. So this has been badged as an exhibition, it's a psychological intervention, but it really is so much more than that. Some of the participants are here to talk to you about how it's been for them over these last few weeks. I'm going to hand over to Linda in a moment because it's Linda, thanks Ciaron, that's conceptualised this exhibition and brought us together.
Who inspired you?
Well, the book, 8 Pillars of Caste, 8 pillars that uphold caste. And I really became enamoured with that. And then I wanted to look at my life through those 8 pillars.
So what I want to do now is, since we're in this space, is give you a little insight into what we've been doing in here these last few weeks. So you come in, and some of you will have had a chance to, some not, go behind the screen, and there you'll see a mock-up of my consulting room, my psychotherapy consulting room. And every morning, between 10 and 12, we've come into that space, me and Linda, but also one of the participants. We've had a 2-hour session together, a psychology session, where the participants talked about their life. And Linda's been there the whole time, listening, talking, asking. And then after that session, Linda mind maps what she's heard of that person's life, which you can see behind you. And if you'd have come in right at the beginning of this exhibition a few weeks ago now, you'd have come in and seen the darkness behind there and shadows and blank pages. I think dormant was the word I used, Linda, waiting to be woken up by Linda's amazing mind maps. And so Linda mind maps what she's heard, and you'll look at them, and I don't know what you'll see different things, but when the participants, or at least I can speak for myself, when I see them, I see so much meaning and so much about my life in those drawings. And I don't know what you'll see, maybe you'll get a chance to go and look at them in a moment, but your unconscious will certainly be seeing a lot of what's going on in there. It's been an incredibly powerful process. When I first met you, Linda, we were talking about our white mums, and then Linda, who's sometimes given to acting out scenes and kind of to really bring them to life. And you said, Adam, look at this, and then you got something that resembled a swaddle. And you said, this is our mums in the hospital. And then you kind of mimed them holding a brown baby, us. And I wonder in society, even now, with how progressive things are, how things have moved on, whether, I'd be interested in the view from the room, how normal it feels. If we see a white woman cradling a brown baby, how normal that feels to us. And I don't want the first thing that people would say in terms of self-presentation, oh no, it's totally normal, I'm fine with it. Actually, really, if we look inside our hearts and our kind of reactions, how normal is that yet? And I was just interested in something that happened in the workshop when we were sat here together and you looked towards 2 child psychotherapists.
Oh yeah, I innocently said, you look like my mum. And they both went. And I said, no, you really do. You know, like when my mum got older, and you could see wrote on their face that they couldn't have a child like me. No, it wasn't aggressive or ugly, they just couldn't take it in. But they really did look like my mum when my mum got older.
So you, at the beginning, said, this is entitled, My Mum is White. I mean, it couldn't be more obvious. But that's, for some of us, that's intellectual.
Yeah.
For you, I think, the way I read it is that that was your epiphany to yourself, like, my mum is white. It was, it was epiphany. And I wonder how many of us have really had that epiphany, or been able to have that epiphany, that is possible and real.
I remember having the epiphany, and the story's too long, but I wrote it in an Arts Council grant 10 years ago for something else. And I wrote, my mum is white. And then I wrote, but nobody will believe me. To the world, I am black. So where's my mum gone?
We've shared a lot in this space, and a lot of difficult experience. And there was one moment when members of the group had shared particularly difficult experience. And as a group, you noted, Linda, that we seem to rush over it. And I thought it was your insight that our trauma gets racialized, so that somehow it's secondary. I don't know if I think you could say more about that and make better than I am trying to.
This stays with me, and it's massive, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get hold of it yet. But what I noticed was that each of the 7 participants had true trauma in their life, and that somehow we don't seem to take that serious. So we're dead bothered about the colour of our skin, but not some of the shit that's happened to us. I mean, real bad shit. Do you know that? And some of that's happened actually because of our colour, or is heightened because of our colour, or is linked to our colour. Some happens nothing to do with our colour, but gets wonky because of our colour. And each of us had not taken our trauma seriously. So I don't even know what I mean about this yet. It's going to take quite a lot of thought, but that's the thing that most sticks out to me. I didn't intend to go down that path when I started this, but I think that's to do with, it's the 6th pillar, and it's dehumanisation and stigma, to get you to believe you're worth less. And I think we actually think we are worth less, somehow. And how that came about as well was, the very first meeting we had, we did a planning day, and then each of us said kind of a big trauma. Said it as if we'd said, oh, I've just had a sandwich, and we reacted as if to say, oh, your sandwich must have been good. And then when I went home, I thought, oh my God, we didn't even say, oh my God, to what they'd said. Do you know, yeah. Do you know what I mean, don't you? Yeah, so that's the biggest thing that's come out of all of this for me. Yeah, and then when we have addressed it in the mind maps and in the discussions, we've cried our eyes out, literally, including Adam, in unable to get a hold of it, cried our eyes out. Or maybe I'm a crying my eyes out tonight, right? But you didn't cry in that same way, but I seen you like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll answer the mind map one first, and I'll get that. So I think, I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate this. So a lot of the things that Linda's referred to in my own journey happened when I was very young, sort of like 10. And again, I don't want to make her cry, but with the support of my mum, I did a lot of work to address that at the time. So I would say, generally, it felt going into it like I was possibly ahead of some of the other people on that journey, because I'd done probably a substantial amount of work to deal with that, to get into the place that I am now. The thing that I suppose was interesting about the mind map was there was things on there that I'd mentioned off the cuff that I didn't think much of, that Linda had heard and then put in the mind map, and then they were kind of contextualised with all the stuff that I did think was important. And they were almost just as important, but they were things that I just, like Linda said, had kind of just like breezed over, which I thought was really interesting. And then the practicalities of doing the two after we deconstructed them and looking at the one that she had second was really interesting. But probably the most interesting thing about the mind maps for me, about the process, was not actually mine, it was seeing the other people. So what was interesting is, as we got through the process, my sort of ability to understand the mind maps sort of shot up. So I was looking at them and I could literally see, based on the stories that I'd been hearing from the other participants, where it was and where everything fit together. And I think that journey from the start to the finish was massive. So the last one that we did the day before, I was the last one, but the one that we did the day before, the clarity that I had and the understanding of the link between their story, their trauma, their experiences, etc., through to the mind map was huge. But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I would say you're right. I think one of the other participants I've known for about 5 years. We've worked together, and they're not a close friend, but I know them really, really well. And having heard their story and some of the things they've been through and how they've dealt with it and all the rest of it, it was almost like incredible to think, and this actually isn't necessarily a race thing, although a lot of their story was about their race, how amazing and just incredible it was that we'd had hundreds of conversations with this person who really just was a complete stranger, and then it wasn't until we'd gone through this process together that I sort of understood everything that they'd been through. And I think that was really, your question at the start about the politics and the time for now, for me it was quite political, and I think all of the things around what we saw on Saturday, the flags, the protests, all the rest of it, that actually was very evident within the conversations that we'd had. And I guess there's something around that sort of empathy or understanding for other people that that person I'd spoken to them hundreds of times and never had the first idea about the level of things that they had gone through just to get to where they were now. Which I think if you were to kind of do the process that Linda's done with everyone in this room, you'd probably struggle to find somebody who didn't have something quite significant in there. So yeah, that was probably the most interesting thing for me.
I just want to say that I'm a psychologist and psychotherapist, so I know what it is to listen to people attentively, and I know what it is to be listened to attentively. I've had the benefit of therapy and analysis as part of my professional journey, personal journey. But there's something about being mind-mapped by you, Linda, that was just the most incredible listening. Like, once you finished, I looked up and saw my life represented on the page. And I can't really find the words, but I was so grateful to you in that moment, because I'm probably struggling to think of a time when I've been listened to more attentively. And to have somebody dedicate themselves and their body, because Linda's been at this, not just the weeks we've been in here, but the weeks up to here, like preparing her body for the discipline of having to do this day after day. To have someone dedicate their mind and their body to getting you, it's just been the most powerful thing. Thank you.
Thank you. You say something about you.
That's the come. I wanna. It's definitely to come. Don't worry. But I want to move. I want to make sure that we get some of this process in. I want to hear about participants in the group's understanding of exorcising half-caste ghosts, or just the process of exorcising whatever that is you're doing here. What does that mean to you?
I remember when we were first asked this on our first day, when we were sat around in a circle, getting to know each other, because this was the first time I'd met the other participants. And I was asked, to hear exorcising ghosts or like an exorcism, what does it mean? And I said, sounds like a horror film. Like I'm way into my horror, so I just went like straight, like ghosts, all that, demons. But that's exactly what it is. We're talking about demons, ghosts that have been brought up in our conversations. And for me, we were asked this again just last week, and I said, an exorcism for me now is acceptance. With my journey, specifically about growing up and my dad, it was accepting. So accepting people are who they are, and then being able to move on from that instead of holding on and being held back and being able to move forward. So that exorcism side of things, that really became clear from when we were asked maybe last month to now. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you.
Yeah, mine was about, I think in that same session that we had last week, I described it as leaving something behind, so it was kind of like letting go. And I think, we talked about still being on this journey, I don't really know what mine is. I think I'm still thinking it through, but again, I don't want to speak on behalf of the participants, but I know that one of the things that some of the others have got from it is that sort of sense of clarity and a bit like Elly said, like acceptance of things you can change, things you can't change, and also I suppose an element of like contextualising your own story. So Adam talked a lot about privilege or empathy, and as much as it sounded like a really heavy process, there has been so much celebration as well. So about wonderful families and support and friends and all of that sort of stuff that ran all the way through every day. There was one session specifically where the participant was talking and we got to 12 o'clock, and the bit that we got to in their story was just incredibly heavy and deep, and I think we were all feeling a bit emotional. And Linda, I think it was Linda or Adam said, do you want to go for like another 15 minutes, because we'd started late, and we carried on. And even in that 15 minutes of their story, by the time we left at 15:15, we reached such a joyous, beautiful part in their life that it just sort of, I remember I said at the time, I was like, I'm so glad that we broke now and not 15 minutes ago, because we would have all been having lunch a little bit depressed. So that was a big thing for me. Like when I went into this, and again, when I told my partner, and I hadn't mentioned the Exorcising Half-Caste girl, so I'd only told them it's called my mum's wife, called Kate. And then when I sent her the home link, she was like, "Exorcising? What's that about?" And so, because it has got quite a scary connotation, hasn't it? But I think that would be the big thing I'd say. Like for me, the exercising itself actually was a big part of the sort of celebration. And the one of the other participants says that something like joy is resistance. So the idea of actually focusing on all the amazing things you've got in your life as a way to kind of combat the darkness, which is what I probably took most from it.
I think as well, sorry Adam, jumping in again, because we both said acceptance, it's not passively accepting, it's actually taking control and thinking I am going to allow myself to accept it rather than that decision being made for me.
You jump in. It's like what it's like the whole time, and everybody says nobody because no. But do you know what that is? I don't think any of us has had a space where we've just been together with mixed race people. So we're coming. We just want to talk. We want to share, and there's been a lot of laughing, and I think that's been amazing. It's just been such a joyous process. I think, interestingly, that's been a disturbing process, not for us, but for the organisation. But we may come on to that. But in terms of my sense of exorcising, I'll share with you a little experience that I had and the way in which it's been exercised. And Michelle, I don't know, I can't see you, there you are. I'm going to take my privilege and share that story that I shared for the workshop once again, because it's about bringing something to light. And then sometimes when I felt a bit shy about saying something about other people, Linda said, "Well, they shouldn't have done it." And it's like, yeah, do you know what? They shouldn't have done it. My experience of exorcism is, if you go behind that screen, for those of you who haven't already, again, you'll see my consulting room. And that consulting room's important because it is an analogue of a consulting room I used to have in Norwood House, which is a set of psychotherapy rooms, essentially, in Fallowfield, Victoria Park. Now, I'm really going to truncate this story because there's a long version and a short version that I'm working on in real time. The short version is, I was subletting a room from my supervisor as a psychotherapist, and I went in one day with a patient to talk about. So I had my pages, my process notes ready to do some learning and thinking about my patient. And my supervisor said to me, "Adam, I've just got something to say to you before you start." It's okay. I noted she looked uncomfortable. And she said, "Oh, the landlord's just said to me that the cleaners found little black hairs in the sink. So if you use the bathroom, just be sure to wipe them up." Now, wow. I've said to the group, I was living the life at the time. I was working in the NHS, the university, private practice. I was loving my life. I was loving those consulting rooms. I was loving that space. I was loving bringing patients to. It was a wonderful space. But suddenly, in a moment, it was ripped from me. And I'll spare you the long story. There was fallout, there was this and that. But eventually, I thought it was better for me and my patients that I left the space. So I left the space. And my white psychoanalytic psychotherapy colleagues receded into the shadows. So here we are now today, and I've got the consulting room again. And what's been amazing is we've done the work that we've done, and I shared that experience with a group of people that came to a workshop on ghosts in the nursery, and I told the story as I'm telling it to you now. But I was struggling to hold myself together in telling the story. I was feeling like on the verge of breaking down. And then I said at one moment, something just entered me, and I said, "I'm so angry." And I tell you what, I felt so light and so exercised in that second. It was unbelievable. And this, should I tell you this bit or not? Or you're with me now. When I tell you this next bit, you go, okay, we're going from sympathy to this guy's just a bit. But actually, I felt my partner in me at that moment, because I think she's got a more normal relationship with anger than I do, and I felt her in me. I'm so angry. And you know what? My good colleague came up to me afterwards and he said, "You know what the most powerful thing about this experience has been for me? The fact that as a black man, I've seen another black man be able to express his anger just in a normal, ordinary way, because anger for me has always been so toxic and so destructive." And I felt so thankful to have been able to give him and myself that moment. I'm so thankful for Linda for encouraging me and urging me to recreate my consulting room. The plan wasn't to, in any kind of strategic way, exercise that goes from that consulting room by having a moment in a workshop, but it just came upon me because the nature of this space that we've created and the people that we've amassed has just been amazing. And I have to say, where my psychoanalytic colleagues receded into the shadows, Ciaron, Elly, Linda, and everybody else in this group, this crew, came forward to be with me. And I just can't tell you how powerful that was. So thank you.
And mine literally was an exorcism. So when I was 16, I was in love with a guy called Ivan, and his other girlfriend stabbed him, and he didn't see the light of day. It happened on my doorstep. I was 6 months pregnant. I had a 6 months abortion. And until I started to talk about it, I had no idea I was going to talk about it. But 10 days before, on the very first practice mind map, she's called Pauline, she appeared. And I always promise myself when I do a mind map, I have to draw what is told to me to draw. So 10 days prior, I had drawn Pauline. She was in no relationship to anything in the mind map. And then when and I've got, my first day mind map is gorgeous. It's got no trauma in my heart's mended, everything's wonderful. And then as I started to talk, do you remember?
Yeah.
And it got to about 10 minutes before the end, and the story just came out, but a full-on exorcism. Do you know, like where I was proper crying, and I was sobbing, yeah. And I even remember the size of the knife wound, you know, and yeah, so. And I'm grateful for that.
And we were so grateful to you for sharing that, because it's strange as it sounds, I mean, that was a particularly powerful example, but people, participants, the group members have been sharing stories and experiences like the whole time. And instead of people cowering away, so I don't want to hear it's horrible, people have been so thankful. They're so thankful that you shared it with them.
But that's in Ghost in the Nursery as well, because it says that when we tell our story, you just tell it, it's just a picture. But what was happening was we was walking into it, weren't we? So we were feeling it, and feeling it is different, innit? Because when I did your second mind map, I could see you feeling it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's also something about setting out the sort of context for how you're going to talk to each other right at the beginning, which as part of the process which helped. So on the workshop day, we did to kick off, we all sort of went around and sort of said, you know, we know we're going to be talking about some quite traumatic and quite serious things. Does anybody have any sort of non-negotiables? And there was really practical things like don't look at your phone or don't be late where you can and all that sort of stuff. But then, you know, one of the participants said, if I get emotional, just let me cry, which is good for me because I am just naturally the kind of person who wants to comfort people, so I'd be like straight over, like, come on, it's fine. Whereas she was like, I'll prefer to just be left. And then so during that process, every time that happened, I knew that that's how they wanted to be kind of looked after, and not doing that was not a bad thing, which I think helps because obviously, naturally, when you see someone upset or you see someone kind of going through something, you often don't know how to deal with it, but the fact that we kind of gone around and said, if this happens, this is what I would like, this is how I respond best, it's probably not something we do day to day, but actually, you know, was really positive for the general experience of the group.
Well, the next day I felt about 10 years younger and about 10 stone lighter. But actually that trauma was actually linked to colour, because my dad hated him because he was black. My dad is black, my mum's white, and my dad is black. And my dad, this is 1976, and my dad was born in 1926. No, 22. He just thought I was throwing my life away to be with a black boy. So he hated him. So all of that trauma was never dealt with because I brought shame to my dad.
But Linda, can I ask you what you take from this?
What I said before is that stupidly, hanging on to the way the world polarises everything, right? Our trauma was lost and hidden. Yeah, so, building a tunnelling into just you and me, and everybody else's human then was beautiful.
What about you, Adam?
Damn. I can't hide behind my psychologist's privilege. And that's, can I just say one thing while another part of my brain desperately works on that other answer is, because I know that there are some psychologists, psychotherapists in the room, and one of the biggest headfucks of this work has been doing private work in a public space. So I had quite a classically psychoanalytic training. So I came in ready, almost obsessionally ready. Some of you may know about group analysis, to do the dynamic administration, to hold the boundary, the time, and then suddenly you're in a gallery of Linda, and it's like, how the hell do you hold a psychology space? And I'm not saying it's been amazing or not, but that's just been one of the biggest pieces of work that I've been doing. And some of the more, maybe, Linda, as you put it, the human. I like to think I'm quite a human psychologist, but maybe even more of it had to come out in this work. And that's something that I'm still wrestling with.
Can I jump onto that one?
Please do.
One of my favourite moments was you crying. No, to see the so-called psychologist, I'm not saying you're not a psychologist. What I mean is, the label. So he's got that label, and I've got this label, and you've got that label. But to see you unable to hold it back, and then the shame of the way you put your face into the thing, and your shoulders going, that was just so moving. And then the way that they were asking you then about your psychology. That you were really opening it up beyond, so it wasn't that because you've now showed your human side, you're a failure. It was now they were more interested.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you've really asked this question, but if you'd asked were there any kind of fears around getting involved, mine was the fact that you are a psychologist. Purely because like I said, I've done some work now when I was younger, it was group work, and it was other young people who'd been through similar things that I had. But it wasn't, or it never felt like a psychology space, and I think there was something for me around the fear that actually I was going to get into this space and have someone looking into my brain and telling me things I didn't want to know, like some superpower. But actually, the fact that I already knew you, and then the space that we created and seeing that kind of vulnerability just kind of stripped that back. So yeah, it's just a comment in support of what Linda said.
Thank you both. In answer to that question, I haven't got a specific thing that I'm going to take this. What I know simply is that life feels a bit pre and post since meeting Linda, since starting this project, and I just know, I don't know how, but things can't be the same for me going forward. I don't know exactly what that looks like, and maybe I'll talk to some of you about how things are different, but I just know that things can't be the same again. So. Please. Do we need mics for people?
I can talk very loudly.
Please.
Can you hear her?
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. For me, this is it feels very much like it's been amazing, by the way, all of this, and to hear all your journeys and stories, fantastic. And for me, it's a project in two halves. One is the journey, the content creation, and the other is very visual. You arrive here and there's these amazing visual manifestations, if you like, of this incredible journey that you've been on. And I suppose the question I wanted to ask was, because without hearing all the stories, you arrive, as people will arrive, and they won't know all of the journeys that everybody's been on. They'll be arriving and taking on these amazing this visual representation of the project. And I wanted to ask, how important is the storytelling, as participants, is it important for me to know what's sitting behind this? I'm a visual person, so I love these just as they are, right? I can make up a story. I can walk around here and make up lots of stories about what it is that I'm seeing, and some of it will be informed by the guidance, whatever it is. I'm sorry I haven't read it yet. The guidance that you're creating around people experiencing these visual panels. But I kind of wanted to know, you know, is it important? How much of what I'm seeing is it important for you that I know what's behind some of that? I mean, I do because I'm sat here, but do you trust me? Have I explained that?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean, yeah. And I think,
that was the question.
no, I do know exactly what you mean. So I think having spent time in this, it's also worth saying, it was, so as I said, I'm part of the senior management team at Manchester Museum, so I'm kind of in charge of, partly in charge of exhibitions and events and stuff. So I came into this partly with my personal experience, but also with my sort of professional head-on in terms of like what the actual experience is, like are people going to understand it, how does it flow and all the rest of it. And I think the more conversations we had and the more time I spent in the space, I sort of came around to the idea that just experiencing it in the way that it is okay. And I'll give you one really good example. Last week, a guy came in when we were in here and he worked for, I think it must have been Manchester College. And he said, we do a drama course and there's 30 of our young people here, we'd love to bring them in, is that okay? And we said, yeah, absolutely. And I sort of watched them and they went round in groups and they all read the description and then they looked at the photos, I can't remember who it was at the time, they listened to the music, and then they would kind of go around in groups and I was kind of like listening and they were sort of dissecting it together, and obviously because of the way that they were obviously miles off in a lot of ways, but actually just hearing them have the conversation with each other about what they thought it was felt really powerful, if that makes sense. So for me personally, it doesn't bother me, and actually I prefer the fact that you can't actually, if you know the story, you'll know. When I talked to my mum overboard, she could see some bits, but some she'd have no idea, and I think that's really powerful. But for me, on a professional level, that was really difficult to let go of, because I was asking myself, are people going to understand it? What's the experience going to be like? But I suppose actually seeing people experience it helped me let go of that. Does that make sense? I don't know if
I always sound arrogant when I say things, but I don't give a fuck. I don't. Do you know what I mean? You can read the wall, it does look beautiful, and also I want it to be a therapy. So I'm practicing on a big level to scale something down that can actually be useful. And also what I really wanted was to do the mind maps big in this space, and I created all the rest so Clarissa would let me do the mind maps big in this space. So and then as me and Adam started working together, it started to become real in its own right. And I think if you'd have read the wall, I think you would get more of an understanding. And also, we cannot tell you the backstories because it's against his psychological whatever. Do you know, like that he signed? That's the official term. So we can't tell you what's behind it anyway. Do you know what I mean? So, and one woman who I love said they remind me of Miro, so that will do for me. So, does that answer you, Dawn? Thank you.
Thank you so much.